ESPN Sports Radio 1300 and 92.5.
Now for something completely different.
We're going to bring it all together.
Because that's the bottom line.
ESPN Radio 1392.5. It's the bottom line with Brad Taylor, where cashing tickets is what it's all about. Alongside the best in the business, Angelo Carriero. I am Brad Taylor. Thank you for joining us on this blessed Sunday morning. 381-1313. We're sure you've got a lot on your mind and a lot of picks coming this afternoon because, ladies and gentlemen, we made it. We finally made it to football season. I still remember the day when they canceled the NCAA tournament and they canceled baseball, the opening of baseball season, and we were looking at months of this. Well, we finally made it through, and now we're at the sports equinox where all the sports are happening at one time. So congratulations, sports fans out there. We finally got to the promised land. On today's show, NFL savant, using the term savant very loosely, Vince Stover of the Sports Stove podcast stops by to give us an NFL preview, and he gives you an absolutely shocking Super Bowl prediction. And in case you missed it, the NFL season began Thursday night and goes into full swing today. So we'll preview all of today's action. We'll also review some of yesterday's college football action, using the term action very loosely again in some of these cases. And, of course, the most profitable segment in Lexington radio, our Mac Daddy Stogie Picks. I just had to remind my good friend Angelo over here that we're a documented 6-0 in the last 2 weeks on this show. He said he didn't know it, but knew that I would tell him that we were 6-0. So, yes, Angelo's in on the picks. You'll get in on them, too, later in the show. All that and more today here on The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor. But first, we got to start the show with a little bit of downer news. We're the Debbie Downer because we are the voice of the Reds here on ESPN Radio 1392.5. So we owe it to the company at least to mention the Reds to start the show, and this will be the only time we mention the Reds today, since they are the only local team currently in action until 4 o'clock this afternoon when the Bengals take over. The Reds are now 20-26 with 15 days left in their miserable season. Only 3 National League teams have a worse winning percentage, and the Reds are now 3-6 versus today's opponent, the Cardinals. As of today, the Miami Marlins, the constant whipping boys of the National League, they are now in 8th place and in the final National League playoff spot at 21-21, 500. For the Reds to get to 500, they have to go 10-4 the rest of the way. And what you've seen this season, do you see that happening? But the good news, at least, is that the Joey Votto leadoff experiment is finally over. Thank God. Final tally for Votto leading off, 21 games, 203 batting average, 283 on base, and, of course, 0 stolen bases. Ricky Henderson can go back to bed now as the best leadoff hitter in Major League Baseball history. By the way, Joey Votto is 37th right now on the Reds in the WAR statistic, win above replacement, negative 0.3. 37th on his own team. That means 36 players have been more valuable to the Reds this year than Votto. And I'm sure those other guys aren't making $25 million this year. Joey Votto is a Hall of Famer, but he's not a leadoff hitter. Do you think this was his idea, or do you think this was David Bell's brilliant idea? Yeah, another brilliant move from Bell that somehow backfired, as they all have seemed to backfire. How did Votto react to being moved back to third in the lineup? First at bat, he hit the hardest ball all season by any Reds player in his first game for a home run. Coincidence? I think not. Speaking of Bell, the Reds lose another one last night in a horrible fashion because of misuse of the bullpen yet again. The Reds are down 2-1 going into the 6th, and Lucas Sims, who has pitched 2 effective innings so far, is sent out for a 3rd inning. Oh, by the way, he hasn't pitched more than 2 innings all year. So why send him out in a big, quote-unquote, must-win game against a division rival? Why send him out for a 3rd inning? Well, what do you think happens? First batter hits a home run to lead off the inning. The next 2 batters get on base. David Bell finally wises up and takes him out. And then the next hitter hits a home run. Now the score is 6-1, and the game is over. Checkmate, David Bell. Today at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, another titanic battle as the Reds and Cardinals finish their season series. Tyler Mahle, as in 10-run rally, will pitch for the Reds, 1-2, 3.89, against former All-Star pitcher, and now seems like he's got a dead arm, Carlos Martinez, 0-2, 12.27. The good news is that Mahle has thrown 3 quality starts in a row, and only Trevor Bauer has a better win above replacement statistic this year on the Reds than Mahle. It's a good season, right? Well, not if you've been putting your money on Mally. The Reds are 2-4 in Mally's 6 starts, and 1-2 when Mally is favored, like he is today. And we've discussed on this show before, investing in Mally during his career has been like flushing money down the toilet. The Reds are 21-37 in Mally's 58 career starts. Negative 22.1 return on investment. PU. Carlos Martinez for the Cardinals hasn't been the same since an injury a couple of years ago, but before that, he was a very good pitcher. ERA plus above 100 each of the last 5 seasons. And the Cardinals are 71-49 in Martinez's 120 career starts. It's just he has a bad ERA this year because he's coming off of an injury. So despite over 75% of the public money on the Reds today, we can't take them. Do you trust the Reds and Tyler Mahle in this spot? Conventional wisdom tells us that Mahle is the better pitcher in 2020, and the Reds are favored in this game, but history tells us taking the Reds today is a very bad bet. And that's the bottom line. ESPN Radio 1392.5. The bottom line with Brad Taylor. College football yesterday. The Big Ten was watching. Now they're going to revote today whether we should play this year or not. They see all those dollar signs in the Big 12's eyes and the SEC and the ACC's eyes, and they need to get back in on the action. What caught my eye, Florida State loses again to one of my old hometown favorites, Georgia Tech. Obviously, Florida State has never recovered from losing Mark Stoops to Kentucky all those years ago. By the way, people forget, when Mark Stoops left Florida State to come to Kentucky, Florida State won 25 games in a row immediately after that. Just coincidence, I'm sure, right? But I'm just saying, that's just facts. Just saying. No program has burned more tickets worse than Florida State the last 4 years. They are 11-23-3 against the spread. That's a negative 33.9%. And they lost to the Citadel last year. Deion Sanders, Charlie Ward, and Bobby Bowden and his tough schedule ain't walking through that door. Louisiana Lafayette upset Iowa State as a 12.5-point dog, the biggest upset of the day yesterday. Matt Campbell, the coach of Iowa State, always talked about as some up-and-coming coach. We don't see it. And the Sun Belt is apparently the next best conference other than the SEC as they went to the Big 12 and won 3 games yesterday. Louisville, sporting, and sorry to say this, Big Blue Nation, Louisville has the best quarterback in the state of Kentucky. Cunningham is better than Wilson. You just looked last night. You could tell Cunningham is very good, and Louisville beat Western Kentucky. But, of course, the big boys are still the big boys. Clemson beats Wake Forest. Oklahoma wins big with a quarterback named Spencer Rattler, who sounds like a soap opera criminal. Spencer Rattler. They won big, but neither one of them covered the spread. In fact, underdogs are covering 55.6% in all of college football games so far this season. So taking the dogs has been an advantage early. But with everything going on in the world, this isn't exactly breaking news. So we're looking to take underdogs early in the season. Does that mean we're going to invest in Terry Wilson as a touchdown underdog in a couple of weeks at Auburn? Let's not get carried away just yet. That's the bottom line. ESPN Radio 1392.5. Enough silliness. Today is about the NFL. We are the home of the Bengals here at LM Communications. As you can hear every game of the Bengals this year on our sister station, 92.1 Classic Rock. Year 2 of the Zach Taylor era. No relation, thank goodness. 2-14 last year, but 7-9 against the spread. Year 1 of the Joe Burrow era. The best year in the history of college football from a quarterback. They can improve the quarterback all they want, but last year's the issue with this team was defense. They were worst in the league in allowing yards per play, rushing yards per game, and yards per pass attempt. So it wasn't all just the Red Rifle Andy Dalton's fault, as they tried to make you believe when he was wrongly benched for a while last season, looking for a scapegoat. The Desert has the lines for 15 Bengals games up right now. Week 16 is never posted for any team. In those 15 games, the Bengals are favored to win one of those 15. That's a Week 4 game at home against Jacksonville. Are there any spots we're looking to take the Bengals this year? Well, it's tough to find spots before the season. And as bad as this team has been over the last 4 seasons, they actually have had a winning record against the spread versus their own division in these last 4 years, 14-10. So they've at least competed against teams they're familiar with and turned a profit. But one game I won't be on the Bengals this year is when Pittsburgh comes to town. In 17 career games, Ben Roethlisberger coming to Cincinnati, he has covered the spread 13 out of 17 times, and one of those was a push, 13-3-1. So that's not a game we're looking at. The Desert says 5.5 wins for the Bengals this year, and the sharp money has sided with the over on this one. but there's plenty of questions for this team. Can the defense improve from how terrible they were last year? Is A.J. Green actually healthy? How much of a load can Joe Mixon carry? But this is a different season for rookie quarterbacks, too. In a normal season, I can see people taking over 5.5 wins with a new quarterback, but Joe Burrow is taking the field today for the first time in a full Bengals uniform. No preseason, no nothing. No warm-ups. It's just like a college opener against a cupcake. So we can't fault you for going over 5.5 wins total for this season. But with so many questions, we won't be with you. And that's the bottom line. ESPN Radio 1392.5. The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor. Coming up after the break, Vince Stover of the Sports Stove Podcast with more NFL preview. But first, Clark's Auto Service is a family-owned auto care service that has been serving Lexington since 1983. Bill Clark and his staff have remained open during the entire pandemic, and they're committed to keeping up with technological advances to keep your car and truck on the road. So give them a call today, 859-253-1278, or go online, clarksautolexington.com. Vince Stover in the NFL after the break here on ESPN Radio 1392.5. ESPN Radio 1392.5. It's the Bottom Line with Brad Taylor. And it's time to welcome our next guest. And we're going to talk the NFL here today. He is the host of the Sports Stove Podcast. He is our good friend and a return guest here on the Bottom Line, Vince Stover. Vince, how are you today, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing so good. Football is back, and it's great to be back with you as well, Brad.
It's an NFL Sunday. It's I've never thought that this day would get here, to be honest with you, because we didn't see any preseason football, but here we are. We're one game into the season after that Thursday night game. We are the voice of the Bengals and our sister station, 92.1 Classic Rock, and the Bengals will be hitting the field this week against the Chargers here in Cincinnati. Chargers about a 3-point favorite right now. What do you think about the Bengals this season? Maybe let's look big picture. The Bengals, 5.5 win total for the Bengals out in the desert. Your thoughts on the Bengals going into this season, big picture style?
I think big picture, you've got to, as a Bengals fan, you got to be excited this year. Joe Burrow comes in. There's a lot of hope for really the first time in a couple of years at least with him. He brings so much excitement to the stadium and should bring a lot to the team as well. 5.5 wins, that's a good line, good number. I think they're probably under that, about 4 or 5 wins this season. But big picture, again, I think you're looking at Bengals going the right direction right now.
Bengals odds to win the division plus 3,500. That means if I put up $1 on the Bengals to win the division, I get back 35 if they win it, 80 to 1 to win the conference, 175 to 1 for the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. So can I ride shotgun with you to drive up to the sports book in Southern Indiana and to get some action down on this Vince Stover?
It's worth $5.
Worth $5 little pizza money.
That's right.
Pizza money, as we like to say on this show. So, yeah, I look at some of these games. Now, there's future lines out in Las Vegas. They have lines for every game except the last game of the regular season against Baltimore, January 3rd. But in the first 15 games, the Bengals are favored to win one of those. That's October 4th against Jacksonville. That'll be a game for the ages right there. Watch out for the TV ratings of that game. So the Bengals are favored in one of their first 15 games this year. So how do you expect me to expect them to win 5.5 this year?
Well, it's not an easy start to the year. You expect that when you're talking about division games, typically you're looking at splitting a couple of those at the very least, like maybe with Cleveland, somewhere in that range, maybe getting a big win against Pittsburgh in one of those games as well. Then you're also, of course, the Jacksonville you already mentioned in those early games. There's some winnable games, but any game for Cincinnati this year is going to be a challenge. I think what you have to figure out is what is success this year for Cincinnati. What's the expectation this year for Cincinnati? And it's pretty low as far as winning games goes. Everybody wants them to be competitive, to prove that, hey, there's a day coming very soon that they're going to actually be able to compete for the division.
Right, and as we all know, life's about expectations. If you were picking a rookie for a potential Rookie of the Year vote, would you take Joe Burrow or maybe a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire we saw Thursday night for Kansas City who put up some very good numbers?
Hilaire's going to get a lot of attention because he's going to be on prime time. He's going to be front and center a lot. But when you're talking about awards, quarterbacks are always the top of the award list. So Joe Burrow just has to have good stats this year. Doesn't have to win a ton of games. But, if he can throw for maybe 3,500 yards, keep his touchdown to interception ratio in a good spot, maybe, let's say, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, somewhere in that range, he's definitely going to be able to push for it. And then I think you also have to look even at the defensive side this year with Chase Young over there in Washington. Have a potential to put up a lot of numbers, too, and compete. But I think Burrow, I think there's a good chance of him winning Rookie of the Year just by having a good statistical year.
And you talked about defense. This team last year, dead last, giving up yards per play, rushing yards per game, and yards per pass attempt. So that covers rushing and passing. They were just the worst defense in the league this year. Final record for the Bengals this year, Vince Stover.
I say probably 4 wins, 4-12.
4-12. So you're saying under the number.
Definitely.
Under the 5.5 out in the desert.
Yes.
Speaking of the NFL, we saw the Thursday night game. Kansas City defeats the Houston Texans in a game that people out in the desert were hanging on for their dear lives at the end of that game. Your thoughts on the Chiefs in that game? Are they the Super Bowl favorites as we speak to repeat?
Boy, I think they have to be. You can't do too much measuring off of one game, especially first game of the season when no preseason, very little opportunity of practice and things like that. But at the same time, the Chiefs were so dangerous last year and putting up points so quickly. You watch this year, they don't seem to be, as a matter of fact, they seem to be better already this year, having the rookie running back Hilaire there. Boy, they look incredibly dangerous. The AFC they're definitely the team to beat out there. And even though New England's the only one to repeat here recently, Kansas City looks like they're definitely set up to repeat this year.
So you're calling for a repeat. Andy Reid, a man who's blown more playoff games as a favorite than any coach in recent memory, you're thinking that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl again this year?
I think if I was going to put money on it, I probably would put money on Kansas City. But and I'm a big Andy Reid fan, and I was
to your detriment.
To my detriment. Yes. But last year I picked Kansas City and I got them. So
don't break your arm patting yourself on the back. Here on the Bottom Line with Brad Taylor, ESPN Radio 1300 and 92.5. Vince Stover of the Sports Stove Podcast, congratulating himself for picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl last year. Let's look at some of these other win totals in Las Vegas. Are there any teams that strike your fancy, so to speak, in going over or under their win totals out in the desert?
I've got two teams going under. One in the AFC is Denver, and this was even before the Von Miller injury. I might be wrong with them, but I just don't trust Drew Lock yet. And the division's not easy. Kansas City obviously is great. I think Vegas is better than they're getting credit for. And then the Chargers have phenomenal defense as well. And so, to me, Denver's going to go under. They could be a 3 or 4 win team this year, I think. And then on the NFC side, I've got the Rams going under as well. I think they could be possibly even fighting for a top 3 pick in the NFL draft this year. They've lost a lot of talent. They still have talent. They've got some really good receivers still. But there's a lot of question marks around L.A., especially even on their defense with the changes they've made there. So I've got Denver and L.A. definitely as 2 teams going under.
We're with you on the Rams. We're a big believer that the Rams are going to go under their total this year. And that's a good point you make on Denver. They just lost Von Miller for the season. He was their best defensive player easily. Yeah. Can you trust Drew Lock to win you 8 games? That's what you're asking us. We don't think he can either. That's a team we might want to look under. Both good points by Vince Stover, the Sports Stove Podcast, here on ESPN Radio, 1392.5, The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor. How about teams you're looking to go over the total, so to overachievers out in the desert?
I've got 2 teams there as well. In the AFC, the Houston Texans, and they didn't look good, obviously, on Thursday night. But, again, I don't think you can say, well, base that off of playing Kansas City. Kansas City's going to be great. So I've got Houston going over. I think their number is very low this year. And so I think potential for them to go over. And then also, I'm a big fan of the Giants this year. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram. The offense is good. They've improved their offensive line. They may not be a playoff team yet, although with the additional wild card team this year, possibly they sneak in there. But I do like them over there this year as well.
We're with you on the Giants. The only difference, there's not a big difference between Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. I don't think there's a huge difference in talent level. The only difference is Deshaun Watson doesn't have the supporting cast, doesn't have the support system in terms of coaching that Patrick Mahomes does with Andy Reid and Bill O'Brien. two different people altogether. Yeah, so if you put Deshaun Watson on the Chiefs, are they not defending Super Bowl champions too? Very possible. The Texans, after what I saw the other night, not a big fan of their prospects this year, but you might be right on that one, Vince Stover.
Yeah, I think Deshaun Watson's great. I mean, if you look at if Chicago would have traded up and drafted him, nobody would be going, oh, they could have had Patrick Mahomes. Everybody would say, hey, at least it was still a good pick. Deshaun Watson is phenomenal, but you're right. Even though there is some talent there in Houston on the offensive side of the ball, Kansas City's just better all the way around. Talent-wise, coaching-wise, everything's set up there for Mahomes to be in a better situation than Watson is.
ESPN Radio 1300 and 92.5. The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor and Vince Stover of the Sports Stove podcast. Let's look at week one. Are there any games against the point spread that you kind of like? If you were sitting out in the desert at a sports book, if you and I were standing out there, the good Lord above knows how you and I got out there in the first place. But but that's another story for another day. Let's say you and I are standing at a sports book in the desert today. Who would you go with in the NFL on this Sunday slate?
I like Arizona here in the San Francisco game. San Francisco's at 7 points right now. I'd definitely take Arizona in the points in that game. I think Arizona's going to be very good this year, and they should keep it close. Any division game, especially in that division, should be close all the way around. Then on Monday night as well, I like the Steelers and Giants game right now. The Giants are getting 6 points, and I think that's one to take as well.
With you on the Giants game. I think the Giants can definitely keep that game closer than a touchdown, especially what do we know about Ben Roethlisberger other than that picture from the summertime where he looked like he had swallowed a butterball turkey completely whole. Yeah, the Giants a good pick for Monday night. The Niners over the Cardinals covering against the Niners. Not as big a fan of that one as you might be, but tough to go against Shanahan in a home game, even though they are the Super Bowl losers last year. So yeah, Giants like that pick. Cardinals, we'll talk about that more in our most profitable segment in Lexington Radio here at the end of the show, our Mac Daddy Stogie picks. All right, Vince Stover, you were bragging about picking the Chiefs to win last year's Super Bowl. Let's hear who you've got this year to win the Super Bowl and losing the Super Bowl.
Well, because history is not on the sides of Super Bowl repeats.
That's true.
I have gone a different direction with my Super Bowl pick this year, and I am picking on the AFC side for the Indianapolis Colts to be successful and be able to get Phillip Rivers that Super Bowl ring that he's been waiting for. I've got him going up against Dallas in the Super Bowl, Indianapolis and Dallas. Indianapolis winning the Super Bowl this year.
That is a man stepping out on a limb, ladies and gentlemen. Those are some good odds to get the Colts over the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. I need to look that up really quick. That is plus 28,000. In other words, 280 to 1. That's the odds of this thing happening that Vince Stover just told us was a pure, guaranteed 10,000-star super galactic lock of the millennium.
And my jelly beans are all at the middle of the table right now.
Now that's what we like to hear here on the Bottom Line with Brad Taylor, ESPN Radio 1392.5. Vince Stover, you're a big fantasy football player. Anything you've kind of pulled in from these drafts that you've noticed that you may be catching your eye?
I'll tell you, this year has been more discouraging just because it seems like with all the information that's out there, there's no secrets anymore. You can't do so much research that you've found the hidden gem, so to say, because it seems like everybody else is jumping on top of things. But I always like to favor tight ends with rookie quarterbacks. Rookie quarterbacks are always looking for blankets, security blankets to go to. They throw to the running backs out of the backfield a lot. They throw to the tight ends a lot. That's why, and Evan Ingram already is a great tight end in fantasy football. But Daniel Jones, even though he's not a rookie, still a young quarterback. They don't have great receivers in New York either, and he's the one guy that they can count on throwing the football to. So I like taking tight ends early in drafts. I like second or third round if I can get one of those top guys, the Kittles, the Kelseys. And then I like jumping on guys. If I can't get those guys in the second or early third, then by fifth round, I'm going after somebody, a tight end that's going to be a top scorer in the league. Because there's really about 5 or 6 tight ends right now you can go with and get really good points out of in these fantasy leagues.
You make a great point about how everybody has the same information now. And when we're talking fantasy football, when I first started this, 1990, when I first went to Atlanta and started playing fantasy football, the first thing was about information. Who had the better information? What did you use for your draft preparations? Back then, there was no internet. So did you was it a magazine? Was it a book? Was it, how did you get your information? Then once we got to the late 90s, early 2000s, it was about information gathering, but it was also about number crunching. Because now you got Excel programs, you can crunch numbers, and we all know every league is scored differently. So if a quarterback is really valuable in one league, he may not be nearly as valuable in the next. And you had to kind of numerically figure out who had the most value in these leagues. Now, fantasy football has become so much more of a crapshoot because everybody has caught up. Everybody's got the same information. Everybody knows to crunch the numbers. So it's now kind of more of a game of Plinko on The Price is Right. When you get to the end, is my little chip going to fall in the 0 or the 10,000 spot? Yeah, sometimes it's 50-50 either way. Because the NFL is trying to get more money from everybody to play fantasy football, why is the NFL the number 1 rated program on television? Everybody's got a stake in the game. Everybody's got a pick. Everybody has picked the games. Everybody has got a fantasy team somewhere. Yeah, kind of like the NCAA tournament gets high ratings because everybody's got a bracket. The NFL has figured that out about football and made the information out there to where everybody can play. To where the people who think they're experts like us, it's not as advantageous for us to play those games anymore. But I digress. Here on ESPN Radio, 1392.5. The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor and Vince Stover, who has picked the Colts over the Cowboys. $280 for $1. You can get those odds out in the desert right now. Are there any props, like we call them pizza money props here on this show? Are there any individual player props that you've got your eyes on this year, Vince?
I think the MVP race is going to be an interesting one this year. I see a lot of people leaning towards Drew Brees, other people back to Patrick Mahomes. Russell Wilson's getting a lot of love as well. I think you look at guys like Dak Prescott this year that should get a boost with a little bit of a new system. Mike McCarthy being there in Dallas should give him a boost. Plus, he's got plenty of talent there around him. Then I think you also look at some of the older guys like Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger with the changes that are being made. Roethlisberger back from injury, Rivers on a new team. I think those guys could stand out again as well. And then you've got some surprise guys maybe like Matt Ryan. If he has a great season again this year, and guys that kind of overachieve like Kirk Cousins maybe even this year as well. I think in the MVP race, though, I'm looking down through things. I think Aaron Rodgers has his best chance than he's had in a few years because of everything he's kind of being looked down on right now. I've seen him even in fantasy football going like number 12, number 13 quarterback-wise. That's crazy. And so I think Rodgers has a great opportunity, but I am putting my jelly beans on Derek Carr. I think Las Vegas comes out, has a crazy good year, which for them would be 10 wins. And Derek Carr put up numbers like he did a few years ago, and that would be enough to spark some interest in the MVP votes going towards Derek Carr.
I'm going to list the names that I just heard you mention when talking about MVP. Phillip Rivers, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr. Am I in dreamland here, Vince Stover? Did you really just say Kirk Cousins has a chance to win the MVP this year?
I think he has a chance. You look at the last 2 years, you kind of expected it from both Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. There was that superstar potential, that breakout year, all that kind of stuff. And I think this year we go backwards a little bit to someone who's been around a little bit longer, that just has a far better season than they've had the last 2, 3, 4 years, that now kind of puts them in the limelight, so to say. There
you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Shot caller Vince Stover here on The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor says, not only do you take the Colts over the Cowboys at 280-1 to win the Super Bowl, but David Carr, who may not even last the season as a starting quarterback in Las Vegas, Marcus Mariota, he's sitting there lying in wait. David Carr, your new MVP of the National Football League. You definitely heard that here first. Here on The Bottom Line, ESPN Radio 1392.5. We love shot callers here on this show. So Vince Stover, thank you so much for joining us here today on The Bottom Line. Tell us where we can find your podcast, the Sports Stove Podcast, and where we can find you on social media.
Sports Stove Podcast available in most places you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and you follow us on Twitter at Sports Stove. Brad, thank you so much for having me on today. Sure enjoyed the conversation.
Anytime, my friend. Thank you. That's Vince Stover from the Sports Stove Podcast. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Sports Stove, and make sure to listen to his podcast. It's good stuff. Coming up next here on The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor on ESPN Radio 1300 and 92.5. We're going to go down the NFL slate. We're going to go over these games in a very quick fashion. We're going to tell you who we like, who we don't like, and maybe a little tips that you might be able to put some of your money on today to get your pockets a little fatter. But first, New sponsor here on The Bottom Line. You've heard the old adage, a friend in need is a friend indeed. But here on The Bottom Line, a friend in need is a pest. So if you have unwanted pests in your home, go call our good friend Matt Schaefer at IPM Pest and Termite. IPM Pest and Termite is a locally owned business who's been serving Lexington's pest control needs for over 20 years now. And as the weather gets cooler, those bugs need to go find somewhere to hide for the winter. So if you have unwanted pests and termites in your house, make sure to call Matt Schaefer, IPM Pest and Termite, 859-340-1403, or you can look them up online, myipm.com. Get rid of those pests today with IPM Pest and Termite. ESPN Radio 1392.5 FM. It's the Bottom Line with Brad Taylor. Say that 5 times. Well, I'm very flustered right now because I've been in an argument for the last 5 minutes with Angelo over here about music and his lack of knowledge of 80s music, and now he grabs the microphone to sabotage the show. Go ahead.
That is like literally one of the top hits of the summer, if not the song of the summer in 2020. It's a national classic at this point.
I have one project for this week. I'm loading that system up over there with my music for next week.
So we're going to get that 17 Pet Shop Boys songs?
Well, it'd be at least one. I can promise you that. One more than whoever the clowns were that I just heard.
The Weeknd? Oh my!
They can't even spell weekend. There's more than one. They can't even spell it.
I'm gonna get off here before we get thrown off the air.
Thank you. Let's get back to trying to help people win some money, Angelo. That's why people are listening to this show, not for your takes on 80s music and how awesome it is. Here's some NFL betting tips. As Angelo gives me the big thumbs down. I got to load that thing up this week. NFL betting tips. There are some teams and some quarterbacks in this league that we will not go against. And I gave Angelo a little bit of a quiz earlier, and he's a very smart guy with the NFL, kind of. But he got this question correct, and I give him credit for this. Who are the quarterbacks that you do not want to bet against in this league? Against the point spread now. Tom Brady, and we're all going back for their careers now. Tom Brady hit 61% against point spread. So if you're going against him, you're pretty much, just flushing your money down the toilet. Aaron Rodgers hits 58%. Drew Brees hits 56%. So yes, you would expect those guys to cover the spreads, cash the tickets for you, and week 1 here in the NFL would be no exception. Who are the coaches you don't want to bet against? Well, it's the same coaches that have coached those quarterbacks. Bill Belichick, 61%. Mike McCarthy, now with Dallas, was he the reason that the Packers covered all those games, or was it Aaron Rodgers? Some of us think it was more Aaron Rodgers, but still, he was 57%. And then Sean Payton, 56% for the Saints. So now you have quarterback and coach combinations that have cashed a lot of tickets, won you a lot of money over the years in the NFL trying to pick these games. But there's one coach that is even better than all the coaches that we talked about. I'll give you a second here. What coach do you think has covered the most point spreads, given you the most bang for your buck? I will give Angelo credit. He eventually got the answer to this, but this is a very tough, and if I didn't look this up, I wouldn't have been able to pick this myself. Mike Zimmer of the Minnesota Vikings. He is the best coach in the NFL against the point spread. 64% of the time, he will cash your tickets. 77, 43, and 1. If you put $1 on Mike Zimmer every time he has been on the field as a head coach, you would be up right now $30.16 for a plus 24.9% return on investment. That's very impressive, if I may say so myself. So Mike Zimmer of Minnesota, and he didn't do it with Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees. He did it with Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, Kirk Cousins, Sam Bradford. So what does that say about his coaching ability? Maybe it's a little bit better than the guys that have the stud quarterbacks and just can throw the football out for practice and let them throw it around, when you've got these clown quarterbacks in some cases, like Sam Bradford, and you're still cashing tickets and covering spreads. So it's very impressive, and Mike Zimmer is one coach that I never, ever go against in terms of going against the point spread. Mike Zimmer of the Vikings, our number 1 coach in the league. That's information you won't get anywhere else, and that's why we are ESPN Radio 1392.5. The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor. Next segment, of course, we'll be going over all these games and giving you our Mac Daddy Stogie picks. As we like to remind Angelo, we've done it several times already today. We're 6-0 the last 2 weeks on this show. We will give you one kind of insider information right now. First half unders, we hit that one Thursday night. Well, thanks to a missed field goal with about 2 minutes to go. But we still hit it on Thursday night. First half unders, when the total is less than 31.5 in September. It's early season games. These teams are still trying to find their way, still trying to find their offenses, so to speak. And now we don't even have a preseason to practice our offense, so we're going to have low-scoring first halves in these games. That's hit 56.7% in September since 2003. When teams are trying to figure out their offenses, there are 7 instances of these today. You're going to have to go look them up for yourself. I'm not going to sit there and list them all out for you. Go look at the first half unders that are under 31.5, and hopefully, you'll find some winners because we're going to be on all those winners ourselves. It hit Thursday night. We're looking forward to hit several times today. We hope that's a cash cow for you. But in the meantime, we're going to go to a station break right now because we are going to hit hard. The Mac Daddy Stogie's coming up after the break. We have an NBA pick, and of course, we have our Mac Daddy Stogie NFL picks for the day. But first, Jimmy Skinny McKinney and J&R Construction. They are the best in the business. They do virtual conferences. You can now go on your computer, and he can help you do your home remodeling with all the needs that you have. JRCSI.com, Jimmy Skinny McKinney. Any home improvement you need, things that you need right now, Jimmy Skinny McKinney can do it for you. JRCSI.com. Coming up after the break, the Mac Daddy Stogies, the most profitable segment in Lexington radio, right here on ESPN Radio 1300 and 92.5. ESPN Radio 1392.5. The Bottom Line with Brad Taylor with wannabe DJ Angelo Carriero on the ones and twos, who's raising the roof as if it's 1993 right now. Speaking of Angelo Carriero, coming up after this show, it's the Angelo Show. Angelo, what do you have coming up on your show after the Bottom Line?
Very cut and dry today. We're going to do NBA playoffs and college football scores in our news segment. I'm going to talk to Tyler Dragon, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals. We are going to talk everything Bengals, everything you want to know getting ready for week 1 and the rest of the season. Yes, we're going to talk a lot about Joe Burrow and how he's looked so far because that's where all the buzz is in Houday Nation. I'm going to talk about, because you even texted me, hey, you said, good luck on your football game tonight. Well, Varsity Game Night covered the North Hardin-Frederick Douglass game, which had an ending in a football game I've never seen before. So you'll want to hear about that, and there were 4 Kentucky football commitments, and I'm going to give you my NFL picks for the day. Not like yours with the betting. I'm just going to tell you who wins the football game, not the financial game.
So you're just picking straight-up winners?
Just straight-up winners? We're just talking about the final standing.
See, now you're going for Marge from accounting, filling out her office pool. That's the listener you're appealing to. Let's just pick the winners here. Some of us play in the big boy world, Angelo.
Some of us are football fans first, not fans of the dollar.
Oh, well, hey, cash and tickets is what it's all about on this show, Angelo. Make sure to stay tuned. He'll have some great stuff, NBA stuff, and of course his NFL picks, which I'm sure everyone is waiting breathlessly to listen to his NFL picks for this Sunday afternoon. But it's time for our Mac Daddy. Thank you very much, Angelo. Thank you. It's time for our Mac Daddy Stogie picks. Hey, we will start with the NBA playoffs. Clippers in Denver. They're late in the series now. Favorites in these playoffs, we've been trying to tell you people. 34-27 against the spread, and since 2005, playoff favorites with more money on them than the other team, covers 63% of the time, including 57% this year. So give us the Clippers to end this series, and give us the under 2 because it's a Game 6 or a Game 7. The unders hit in those games 58% of the time because teams are scared. They're playing a little harder defense. We're getting a little tight now. Game 6 and 7 unders hit a lot. Let's go Clippers and under today in the NBA. But, hey, we don't care about that. We're talking football, man. Let's talk football. The Bengals. You can hear that game 4 o'clock this afternoon on our sister station, 92.1 Classic Rock. Bengals and Chargers. Low total, very little win, non-divisional game, 2 new quarterbacks. Take the under, right? Going to be a low-scoring game? No, it's going to be a high-scoring game, baby. We're going over the 42 because when you have that instance we talked about, low total, little bit limited win, and no division, it hits 55% of the time since 2003 in 1,200 instances. So that's a big sample size. Let's go over and root for points today. Very rare because we usually root against human achievement on this show. Bengals and Chargers over. That's your Mac Daddy Stogie for the Bengals. Other picks we have in the league. Mitchell Trubisky. Nobody likes him. Do you know anybody that says Mitchell Trubisky, I'm going to put my money on him? Yeah, you don't. Yeah, so we're going to take the Bears today. That line started Detroit -1. Now it's Detroit -2.5. When you go against the fade in the NFL, that hits 58% of the time in week 1 since 2003. We'll take the Bears getting 2.5 over Detroit. Same thing in New York with Buffalo. Buffalo is 6.5. You trust Josh Allen as a 6.5-point favorite? Neither do I. We'll take the Jets getting 6.5 against Buffalo. One of our favorite over-under totals this year of win totals, Carolina getting 3 against the Raiders. We'll take Carolina. New coach, new quarterback. Home dog. Give us the Panthers over the Raiders. And then on Monday night, we like 2 of these games. Angelo and I talked about this. We like the Giants getting 6 against Pittsburgh. Big Ben, does he have it again? We'll find out Monday night. And Denver getting 3 against Tennessee. We'll take those 3 dogs on Monday night. So there you go, our Mac Daddy Stogies. Clippers and under in the NBA, and over, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. Clippers and under in the NBA. Too many unders and overs. I get confused. Chargers and Bengals, over. Bears, Jets, Carolina, Giants, and Broncos against the spread. Thanks for listening to The Bottom Line. Stay tuned to The Angelo Show right here on ESPN Radio 1300 and 92.5.